Okay, sir. Should I start now?
Yes, okay, sir.
Okay. It's very good evening and warm welcome to everyone who is connected on this virtual platform of iSPELL. This is 41st Sunday Sahityak Satsang, and the topic is Conceptualizing Digital Humanities, an Oxymoronic Dilemma. The keynote speaker today is Dr. Muralikrishnan TR. Welcome, sir. Our chairperson today is Dr. Nilanjana Pathak from Jabalpur. Welcome, ma'am. And the master of ceremonies today is
Thank you, sir.
Om Purva Basu, assistant professor of English from Reva University, Bangalore.
Thank you, sir.
Allow me to introduce our master of ceremonies today. Sompurva Basu is an assistant professor and has a master's degree in English literature from Ravindra Bharati University. She is qualified in UGC NET and currently pursuing her PhD from Reva University. She is a vocalist in Hindustani classical and semi-classical music and a regular performer on Bangla Doordarshan and the other regional television on reality shows. The platform is all yours, ma'am. All the best. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor Rakesh Kumar Tigraskar, sir, for this warm introduction. A very warm evening from iSPELL to one and all present in this virtual conglomeration. I extend a hearty welcome to you all for the 41st Sunday Literary Satsang. To quote Benjamin Franklin, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. I'm sure all of us are rightfully directed towards the treasure of knowledge. Thanks to Sunday Literary Satsang by iSPELL for creating the pathway towards the same. We are truly honored to be associated with the connoisseurs of knowledge. Indian Society for the Promotion of Language and Literature, popularly known by its acronym iSPELL, is a society established with a motto, facilitate to elevate the taste and bliss in the field of English language and literature. Considering the emerging trends in the field, it is a need of the hour to blend the trends and mend the minds. iSPELL is a people's platform to share and impart expertise of renowned academicians and members to the fraternity and the stakeholders. The society believes that one can improve and elevate his or her abilities once opportunities are made available. Potential is always there. The need is to bring it out from the margin to the center. Today, we have an erudite personality along with us, Dr. Muralikrishnan TR, who is an associate professor, head of the Department of English in MES Asmabi College, Kodungalur. Dr. Muralikrishnan has rendered service to various aided colleges under Muslim Education Society and the University of Calicut for more than 26 years. He's currently a member of the editorial reviewer panel in 4 national and international journals. He has authored 2 books, an introductory textbook of linguistics for English learners and discourses, and applied linguistics and English language teaching. He has given 31 paper presentations and 24 national and international citations. He is now a member of the Board of Studies PG English in MG University and Calicut University in UG Board. For a period of 11 years, he had been the NAC IQAC coordinator of the institution for 2 successful accreditations. Regarding publications, he has 14 articles in books or edited volumes, 24 articles in research journals, 7 articles in seminar conference proceedings to his credit. He is the recipient of ELT-REPS India Award 2014-15, granted by the British Council in 2014. He completed a minor research project financed by the UGC titled Narratives on Indian Women, foregrounding the flustered and flummoxed female in 2011. I accord a hearty welcome to you, sir. Now it is time to trigger. Thank you. So now it is time to trigger our cognitive senses by listening to our esteemed resource person, Dr. T.R. Muralikrishnan, on the topic Conceptualizing Digital Humanities, an Oxymoronic Dilemma. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now let me see whether the screen can be successfully shared or not. If not, I'll go for the direct lecture. I believe the other side I have technical help to complete the formalities.
Yes, sure. Please share the screen.
I believe you can see the screen there.
Screen is shared. Yes, now visible, sir.
It is visible now.
Yes, visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
So, thank you for the nice words. I thank the my friend Sompurma Basu for giving me some kind of a push in the sense for the kind words that she has spoken. Now, similarly, I have great regard to the event coordinator, Professor Ragesh Shigar, and as well as the chairperson, Professor Nilanjana Padak. Now, my topic, as you can see, is conceptualizing digital humanities, and I have purposefully titled like an oxymoronic dilemma. Now, when I say oxymoronic, as I think you can presume, so those who are witnessing me can understand that it functions like an oxymoron, because when you say digital humanities, it encompasses two different aspects which are conventionally understood as two different things. So at one level it is digital, the other level it is humanities. Now we'll move on to the idea, or we shall first see what digital humanities is all about. And I needn't give you a full-length discussion on that, because we have to complete this in a matter of 1 hour. But along with that, I'm sure those who are teachers in this particular forum and those who are watching me, they have already got introduced to the idea of DH, because for the last 1.5 years, or almost say starting from 2020 March onwards, we are into a digital kind of a situation, because most of our classes are online, and you have modified your content to suit your laptop or whatever be this, because you have converted those textbooks into a kind of digital platform, or in the way that you want to express that. Maybe it can be a simple slide, or it can be a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group, or maybe any ICT tool for that matter. You must have converted that in such a way by which we now transmit our ideas through various platforms. Now this is one. Now what I am doing now is also like that. So I needn't like all of a sudden I needn't tell you that what you are doing now is a strange, or what you are going to listen to me is all strange. No. We have all in a way got introduced to this kind of a phenomenon. But what exactly is this from the point of view of say maybe a philosophical kind of a thing, or maybe from the computational kind of a thing? So that is what we are trying to say. And there are many higher levels also. It is not just a matter of teaching or interacting or using computers for teaching maybe English or history or politics or sociology. No, it's more than that. We have just begun, that's all. So maybe in a matter of 20 or 30 years, once online learning gets included into a kind of curriculum, that's also a very important thing. Maybe teachers will have this problem of even facing loss of job also. That is all predicted. You don't know what can happen, but this online platform or online learning is not transmitting what we are actually interacting or using, maybe positioning a camera in front of a student or a teacher like that. No. So let us see what DH or digital humanities is all about. Now, this question is very important. It has begun like the idea of DH got into a particular paradigm, I should say, from 2010, when Matthew J. Krishenbaum had raised this question: what is digital humanities and what is it doing in English department? Now, this is a valid question which came to the academics by around 2010 in a particular journal. Now, what is the reason why we consider this as a challenge? Or for the last 10 or 12 years, it is there, it is affecting us in a way or other. It is directly or indirectly affecting our lives, or in the sense academic life, or generally academia in a very broad sense. Now, the reason we can say, like as I have just projected it, now this idea of text, as far as an English teacher is concerned, I believe most of you are part of the English academia, so that is why I'm using the word text there. Now, when we say digital humanities or bringing the idea of say computation along with literary kind of studies, there is this already we have already begun for the last 20 or 30 years. We have already unraveled the mystery of the text, because gone are those days where we actually worshipped the content of the text, say starting from Roland Barthes or maybe Derrida or Paul de Man, or from days onwards, that the idea of the text has been the sanctity of the text had already been dismantled. So that it has become, so that is why a lot of manipulation is happening there. So people have started inventing new ideas related to the concept called text. And then we all know that there has been this long-standing association or a kind of an understanding between computers and composition. Now, this has also a direct impact on the teaching and learning process, or even in the case of critical analysis, or whatever be the analysis. It can be an analysis at the textual level or at the level of discourse. This is happening. And now with the emergence of electronic literature, I am referring to hypertext later on, with the arrival of or the emergence of hypertext literature starting from 1990s or late 90s, we have this new concept coming up. Whether this is stable or whether this is the way that we read, whether it should be read in the linear form, or whether the reader has the freedom to intervene in the reading process. So that also has revolutionized the idea of reading a text from the perspective of what we call as the electronic kind of forms or hypertextual kind of things. Now, further, the accommodation of cultural studies, or we can call it as an openness of English department to cultural studies. Now, earlier, cultural studies was seen part of any other, like maybe other disciplines like sociology, politics, anthropology, or things like that. But now we have for the last few years, maybe decades, maybe 3 or 4 decades, we have now understood even cultural studies can also be taken as part of our understanding of a text. It is also the ideas provided by the cultural studies. Maybe it can even from the political perspective, maybe it can be Marxian, or from the sociological perspective. Now, cultural studies, they have started intruding into our arena also. And finally, as you can see there, this interest in e-reading and the development of e-book devices like Kindle, iPad, Nook. Now, suddenly we have what we call as a complete transformation in terms of digitization or the projects, or what we call as the mining of words, visualization. All these are happening as part of the change in the perspective of literature or literary studies, or maybe, as I said, at the digital level itself. Now, when we look into the idea of humanities, I needn't give a lecture on that. Those who are watching me might be know about, so they are very much familiar about this. Now, it all, when you look into the etymological part, we can understand that it all began with humanitas, means learning and instruction in liberal arts. Whereas humanism, as we understand it now, like for example, the German philosopher Friedrich Emmanuel, now where he actually coined this particular word, and when humanities as a body of knowledge or as an insight, as an underlying attitudes towards the various like studies in literature, history, all that brought into the in the arena of studies, especially humanities, it is actually it has actually changed or transformed the methodology of like following the argument of humanities. So we started bringing in all sorts of notions related to philosophy, religion, arts, history, etc. Now, and we have also stood almost different from other branches. For example, science, believing that humanity studies the objects, like as such, and it is different from the way that we approach science, or maybe we don't use much of a statistical analysis or the patterns of data and the deviations from the original one, etc. Now, we don't bother about all that because it is not science, and humanities, they follow or the discipline of humanities follow a particular method that we have to that we have been following for a very long time. Now, when we look into the methodological part of humanities, as we all know, this binary of what we call as the natural sciences and the human sciences, or what we call as the social sciences, is functioning quite well, or it is perceptible, because we have this idea of objective and subjective reality. Now, this why is it that we have at one level natural sciences, the way that we understand natural sciences, and the way that we study and understand human sciences? Now, there we have, or there we understand the emergence of different paradigms. For example, the paradigm of natural science cannot be compared to that of the paradigm as well as the human sciences, the social sciences is concerned. The values are different, the belief systems are different, the way that we approach, they are all different now. And when we look into the methodological part, we understand that we need to discuss more about language, culture, or maybe ideology, identity, gender, race. All these are specific items that are generally taken up for understanding humanities, and to create a paradigm for the analysis of the subject. We can call it the subject of humanities. And along with that, we also accommodate what we call as the idea of the notions related to narration and the politics related to textuality. Now, these things are generally understood in this particular criteria. And moreover, we also differentiate and as well as appreciate different, I should say, knowledge systems or philosophical systems also. So that way we can say that the emergence of what we call as the methodology as such, which became very popular starting from 2000 onwards in various disciplines. Now it has created a different paradigm altogether to say that we do have, we used to counter the science, the discipline of science, saying that we have a different paradigm altogether. Now along with that, we need to understand that along with that, then came what we call as the idea of DH, or digital humanities. And when you look into the discipline as such, as digital humanities as such, we can see that it is just a matter of only 2 decades, or maybe 2.5, not more than that. And say until then, of course, some basic kind of like technological advancements were made for the sake of understanding text, but not in the general sense as we understand it now, with the perspective of humanities aligning with the digital revolution. Now, when we look into DH, it can be seen as it has been impacted by the digital, and in turn they are shaping. It's a kind of reshaping there. So DH is something. It is, when we look into the new the emerging area that we have around, we can understand that DH or digital humanities is something all around us. We cannot escape from that. It has already taken a particular form, and now it has to be studied as such. Now, digital generally, as we understand, is data driven and it is report oriented, as we all know. Whereas humanities, when we talk about humanities, it is collaborative and social. Now, what we have to understand here is, when we say digital humanities or humanities in relationship in relation with the digital kind of medium, we have to accept the fluidity that is generally known, because the methods, the means and analysis, they differ from they differ at various operational levels. So these are some of the fundamental features that we have to understand when we begin to realize that, okay, DH has come, digital humanities has it has, as a discipline, has come, or it has come into existence. Now, what and the ways in which we have to understand that is the core question. Now, when you just refer to Wikipedia, now I'll start from the common source, which we like tell our students. We can begin with Wikipedia, if not for research purposes, but at least for getting some basic information. We can read that, even though we don't call it as a serious repository of knowledge. At least some basic ideas can be borrowed from the site. So we can see that digital humanities is a in that particular site, you can see like this is a field of study, research, teaching and invention concerned with the intersection. That's a crucial word there. Intersection of computing and the discipline of humanity as, or the humanities discipline as such. Now, second point that you can find in the website is, it is methodological by nature and it is interdisciplinary in scope. So that is another interesting idea that we get. So intersection is there, it has its own methodology, it is interdisciplinary in nature. Along with that, there is this active involvement of investigation, analysis, even synthesis and presentation of information in the electronic form. So that is also happening at that particular level. Now, it will also study how these media affect the discipline. That is also you say this awareness is also there, how this media affect the disciplines in which they are used, and how these disciplines in turn contribute to our knowledge of that. So this is the starting point. If you look into the popular resource, this is what they say about DH. But when we look into at the specific level as well as at the broader level, we can also say that there is this humanities versus computing kind of a binary. And at one level, as you can see, in one side it is history, philosophy, linguistics, literature, art, archaeology, music and social sciences. This is one. Whereas how this is or how these disciplines work in tandem with like the principles that we generally make use of at the computational level, what we call as the data visualization, information retrieval, data mining, text mining, digital mapping, statistic, digital publishing, all that. Now that is at the other level, what we call as the computing level. So these two coexist at a level where in which even an English teacher will have to understand some what we call as rudimentary aspects when they start learning DH, about how it functions and how far we can contribute. So the system of knowledge has to be archived, has to be understood, has to be passed on at a different level altogether. So gone are those days where in which one can fully like read a text and convert that into a possible notion that, okay, this is knowledge. But when students get that, they have now a very clear notion about what is data, what is information, and what is knowledge. So when we try to bring in the concept of DH into our learning kind of a system or a paradigm related to that, these things are vital. Now, when we look into the like history of digital humanities, it has a very interesting history. Now, originally, as you can see, it is considered as computing in the humanities, or related to humanities, we call it as computing. So it is seen as a kind of a technical support. So for the sake of the real humanities scholar, they used to make in or bring in the what we call as the possibilities of using computation in the studying of subjects related to humanities. So this involved, as you can see, the application of computer to the disciplines, various disciplines of humanities, and wherein which you have this machine's efficiency as a servant. Now, why this is happening at one level, you have to understand that. And let me quote from a particular academic called and a writer, Steve Breyer. Now, when Steve Breyer was part of the university system and he wrote about that, there is this interesting comment came. Because by around 1970s or 60s and 70s, if you just cross check, you will easily find that the demand of the subject, the humanities subject, came down drastically, by which there were very few people who actually took up courses related to humanities as such. So to fund a course like humanities was considered as a waste as far as the university is concerned. But they have great what we call as expectations related to the disciplines such as basic sciences, fundamental sciences, or applied sciences. So what they generally talked about the students of humanities is like that. They are the ugly stepchildren of the university. That is what the notion was as far as the students of humanities is concerned. Now, naturally, this what you find now is actually a reaction against to such a kind of a dismissal. Okay, like why should we learn humanities? And now later on we say humanities is in a state of crisis. Now, okay, like I'm not going into the details because it will take away like most of the time that I'm using. So I'm not focusing on that. But please keep this in your mind also when I discuss the part called humanities. Whereas when we talk about digital humanities, suddenly the prestige, the low prestige status of a department, or maybe that really enhanced. That really changed actually, and it started. Bring in more kind of a professional excellence or practices. They started using rigorous standards, and it started getting what we call as exciting theoretical possibilities of exploration. So naturally, by around 2000, slowly and slowly, humanities too started gaining a kind of an acceptance in a different form, because where people started using the tools of computation or like the ideas related to computing into humanities. So the funding, people started funding them, and we have millions of rupees getting into the coffers of the university just because, and say private establishments funding such projects, and so this has been a real drastic change over a period of 15 to 20 years, as we can find during the late 80s or maybe up to around 90s or late 90s. Then, just as we talk about COVID, we need to identify that there are two waves, the first wave and the second wave as far as digital humanities is concerned. And when we talk about waves, what is the difference between the first and the second wave? We call it as the first wave as digital humanities 1.0 and the other one as 2.0. Now, in the first wave, it is generally as a kind of not fully superficial, but they talk about the editing, classification, textual encoding, all that. This was going on in the first phase, or what we call as the first wave. Whereas in the second wave, in 2.0, it started, bringing in more concepts. So it became more of not just application level, it started integration, it started convergence. So we have hybrid methodologies coming up, new and new possibilities of understanding things, like it became deeply generative. That is what we need to understand here. And it started using tools for the sake of producing, curating, and interacting. So by the time we have students who are already, I should say, born digital, say those who were born after maybe 2000, etc., they started coming to universities and colleges. So they took greater amount of interest in such kind of research activities. So that is the second way. So in the second way, as you can see, the pursuit of goals and outcomes, which were once thought, okay, it is just a matter of preserving traditional knowledge or humanities. It got into what we call as complex levels, or it got into what we call as the analysis of at more, I should say, with greater amount of depth and incisive kind of criticism and critique, and possibly what we call as interpretation. So we can say that the second wave, we can have what we call as the total or drastic changes that has happened in the existing humanities, or the movement that takes the existing humanities, and the way that it has transformed things. And also you can see it as a movement that theorizes new concepts in the humanities, which also involves what we call as the digital platform. So these two things happen at the second, or in the second wave as such. So please understand, this second wave actually nourished the idea of digital humanities, where in which we have even theoretical foundations being outlined or maybe emerging from what we call as the concept of say DH, and more texts, more and more studies, and more like ideas, they have started coming up. So it is not a matter of just like coding, encoding, classification. No, it is more than that. So let us now see the trends that are happening in the digital, or the presence of DH in cyberspace. Now I have taken two data from 2008 and 9, but after that it is my own, because I have been working with this for some time. So as you can see, in March 10 in 2008, when you search for DH, so digital humanities, you get around a result like 99,000. And whereas in after 1 year, it so happened that in 2009 it becomes like, as you can see, 1,80,000 kind of thing. No, from there, you have to count the number of zeros one after the other, by which you can see what happens in August 2019. If you just hit digital humanities, you will get so much of responses to the tune of crores. And again, 14 is what you find in 2019, whereas in June, today, if you do the search, it comes to around 17. So this kind of jump, I should say leap, is happening in the field of digital humanities, because this is a trend that should engage the humanities departments and the people who are working in this particular area. Now, let me share some of my personal experiences there, like one or two. Now, this is something which I have done, or not sure, as a kind of an evaluator of a thesis way back in 2017-18. Now, this is a like title of a thesis. I'm from Kerala, so you can understand why Malabar is there. Yeah, Malabar in cyberspace. The presence of Malabar. Now, if you look into this particular thesis, this is I should say a hallmark as far as the DH is concerned from our state, because this was done in Kannur University. Now, when you look into the objectives of this particular thesis, you will see that it talks about the imagining of cyber communities with specific focus on the cyber Malabar. That is very interesting. Like how the presence of Malabar in the cyberspace, with special reference to what we call as the role of social and spatial relations, and the strategies that are involved in imagining of Malabar and the virtual space, and the traditional artifacts that are formed, the notion of offline as well as online. Now, how this has been converted from the offline to the online versions, and the kind of space that has been generated. Now, if you delete Malabar and if you add your state, you can also do a similar kind of a research, and then you can generate a new kind of a data, that is how far say your state instead of cyber Malabar, you can see how your area has been projected into the cyberspace. This is a wonderful area which I have found, and actually that concept of imagined communities, like what happens like at that level, it's something very insightful as far as the emergence of DH is concerned. This is one. Now, I'll try to narrate a story of the father Busa, like story of Roberto Busa. Now, actually, he went to the president of IBM one day, like Thomas J. Watson, and he asked for permission to permission to study the study the vocabulary of the works of Saint Thomas Aquinas. So he wanted to use computers to study the vocabulary of Aquinas, Saint Thomas Aquinas. Now this happened decades back, and this, I should say, is considered as this computer-based study of the natural language, NLP, we call it as natural language processing. So when this work was undertaken, like as a discipline of humanities, I should say, the humanities related to computers, later it was renamed as digital humanities. Now, actually, this created a new platform of understanding what we call as a different kind of a knowledge system in terms of computation. So this is one interesting episode related to Roberta Busa. And then if you look into the elements of digital humanities, starting from maybe 2018 or 19, this can be seen as a typical parameters for assessment. Now, what are the basic elements that go into the study of digital humanities? Now, these are general things that, like, we have objects there, we have artifacts, we have image, we have the sounds and audio, film and the audio there. Then we have the study of space, place, and environment. I've already made a reference to what was the study based in Malabar, for example, and then some computer-related games. Now, when we analyze that, when we begin with DH, we need to understand that these are certain things that generally people take into discussion for understanding DH. Now, we will begin with DH related to object. Now, if you have time, you go to this given site, natural history site. It's a museum kind of a site, and there are two sites which I have given there. If it is possible, please go through that particular site, and you can have a first-hand experience of the things that are happening inside that particular museum. So it's a kind of a journey. It's a kind of a journey into history and learning things directly. You are sitting inside your office, but you're actually witnessing a tour. It's called a virtual tour, or maybe trying to understand the stories, the ancient life because they have been actually digitally archived as well as animated for the sake of a visitor. Now, this is the beginning of one level of changing, or totally, I should say, drastically changing the perspective of understanding humanities. Now, I have put you a particular picture from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now, I'll tell you a story related to that, because one of my relatives happened to visit the particular museum there, and he was a visitor there. And of course, because he's from India, he took interest in this particular statue, or this Nataraja. And then he came near to that particular statue, and the guide there, who used to explain things, couldn't do that with kind of conviction. In the sense, he couldn't convincingly tell many things related to that particular object, or what we call as the idol of Nataraja. So my relative, who's of course a distant relative, he started explaining things beautifully, telling that this is actually the concept behind this, etc., etc. So suddenly the guide asked him to get seated in a particular place with all respect, and he suddenly went to a microphone and made an announcement that we have a well-learned visitor from India, and you can listen to him now. So all of you please assemble in this particular hall. Now, within a matter of 20 minutes, the visitor converted himself into a resource person. And then he started, and it was rather a shock because he was not fully prepared, but still it was rather a shock. And there came around 100 students who were writing from what he was speaking, and then there was another person who was actually recording the video through a video what he was speaking. So that means from next day onwards, or maybe in a matter of 2-3 weeks, they have a better idea about how to read a particular historical object. So instead of just watching a particular idol and moving away, saying that it has been built beautifully, now here you have an archive which speaks about the spiritual as well as the religious connotations related to that particular statue. This is what we call as research-driven or a knowledge-driven kind of a study in humanities. This is a personal kind of an experience. So this is one. Next one is artifact. Now you can have what we call as the, say in this particular site, for example, Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, you have this machine assisted translation of cuneiform text. So those who teach, for example, old British history, for example, not just old British history, old history related to Britain, maybe say 2nd century or maybe even prior to that, the arrival of say Iberians or maybe Celts, etc. Now we have a lot of cuneiforms writing there, but you can see that this particular site will help you to understand those writings quite effectively. So maybe you can send that particular cuneiform if you have a particular piece at home, and if you can send them, they will digitally archive it and explain things to you also. So that is why we now say after 1947 we found that many of those ancient scriptures are not there in India but in Western universities. The reason I needn't explain it further. Now you know what is happening there. So this say this is done at various levels. It can be at the national, say American level, or the German Research Foundation. All these people are like following this quite intently, like the artifacts. Then these are the pictures of ancient Paris, not today's. I have to tell you that this is just again another incident. You can see a photograph of a person there. Now it's like this. He is a photographer actually. Now he came to know about this particular story that they are going to modernize Paris, during 1870s, 1890s, etc. So what he did was immediately he went around and took photographs of the entire city from various angles, and now you have almost everything possible as a history about what is there or what was the kind of town it was during the 19th century. So you have all those kept as an archive, so that you have all the images that are there. It's there in the internet also, so you can see further details there. So this is another way, like just see what we do with historical objects in your town, in your city, in your native place. Old structures are just pulled down without even being recorded or maybe photographed, or there could be precious links to our forefathers' lives, practices, cultural maybe associations with earlier generations, cultural practices, all that. But in a matter of maybe a day or two, you totally destroy that, and further, and you get out of connect with that particular knowledge or system of the society there. So this is another. Next, you have what we call as the another kind of manuscript library. It is there in that particular site. You can see that the Parker Library, corpus.cam.ac.uk. You can see that it's a text. It's a text. Actually it is an anecdote. It's an anecdote, and they have actually reworked on that. Now, how far we do it? No, we used to burn all our ancient manuscripts and all. And I still remember one of in one of the old houses. We call it Tarwad or whatever it be. Now, a particular Karnavar, or what we call as the patriarch there, he actually burned all the Sanskrit text, saying that it is actually a waste regarding, say, like, because he needs more space in the house. So he actually burned the entire, like, the leaf, what we call as the Thaliola leaf, the leaf that we preserve for that. This has happened, without any botheration. We used to destroy that. But look at the ancient manuscripts as we find here. So this is the tradition that they follow. But as far as we are concerned, we have lost connection with history, and now we are more concerned with legends rather than human history. Another things I need to tell you is cultures are unique. Say, I have given you three photographs there. We have the the cathedral there. You have the Palace of Versailles, Birth of Venus. There is another painting there. Now, these things are unique. You can't compare this with the other civilizations or other forms of art. They are retained without much of a kind of damage that had happened. Possibly, we can say like that. So that way, cultures are unique and they are preserved with all possible ways. That is another way of doing it. Now we have the sound and audio kind of a thing, and it's a huge collection. If you can look into the narratives, and if you look into the old videos and audios, we have very few of them actually, as far as India is concerned. Now, and we don't have a tradition also. Just imagine those who are listening to me. You might be having people around the age of 80s or 90s, and who are having sharp memory, and those who have got what we call as the days of 1930s and 40s of India, of Kerala society, or maybe Gujarat society, or the society as we find in Uttar Pradesh, etc. So they have got a huge resource as such. So what we can do about it, in order to create a kind of, say, the recorded, just not music, you can have a oral history also, by actually asking them to talk about their lives. And like, maybe after 5 years or 10 years, they may not be there, but along with their death, you actually lose a lot of information about about past lives. And now it has been practiced in Western countries, because people talk about the Nazi occupation quite authentically. The reason is very simple. They have direct videos as well as audios about what had happened during Holocaust. Whereas if you ask anybody about Indian independence, a common freedom fighter, how many audio clips are there related to that? We don't have many. Maybe we have. Still think that it is a duty of the government to preserve archives and things like that. Maybe All India Radio or Doordarshan. No. In Western countries, they don't look for a kind of government sanction to do all this. They move around, collect such tapes, collect such audios, so that they preserve it for generations, so that we can listen to it and we come to know about what had happened in the previous century. Now, that is again a useful kind of a thing, and which we don't have. Then space, and this is something that you can see. Say, for example, a sacred center. For example, this has been taken by the Digital Humanities Initiative, and this is taken by an Indian there. So you have this idea of place versus space. Well, we don't have time to discuss about that at length, but there are people who come to India and to film the temples there, if they are permitted inside, and they do a complete thorough kind of what we call as the filming of each and every corner and each and every stones, so that they know that it's a precious thing. So they have this habit of doing it, and you have huge researches going on in the Western universities on India. The big projects are also going on. So this is one which you can find as a video but I can't play it here, but this is just a slide. But there are some videos available in the internet site itself. And then, interestingly, this is something which we all know what happens in the typical Indian street. Now, even ethnography of literacy and visual image, that is also studied by people. That is also the landscape of advertising in North India. And this is taken from not from an Indian site, but from hamilton.edu. So they do a search on Indian sites just to find out what is happening in India, the way that they read about the ethnography there and the visual and literacy, etc., related to that concept. So they are say so the landscape of advertising in North India that has been going on. So in various cities and various places, and we think that why we spend time on this, why we waste time on this. No, but for them these are all resourceful things. And again, we have lots of video that are available in various websites. Of course, we have started working on that for the last 10 or 15 years. Some sites are there. I have given you a list of those sites also, and some projects are also going on. For example, indiacine.ma. Now, that is an archive of Indian films, and some of them are already going on. So many of the Indian films and and of course YouTube is one another area where you can find a lot of resources related to this. And then some games are also there. If you want to know what happened in which kind of war, etc., for example, ancient history, archaeology, British history, etc., we have, we can see it as a game. At the same time, it is also a learning experience, and you have a big list of actually those things given there in that particular site, so they can click. So anyone who is learning on this can easily see in the a version of what must have happened in those days, and it is actually a technical kind of a remake of what must have happened, and this has been projected. So they have documented everything from history in a new way also. So these are the major things, as I have told in the first section. Just a minute. Yeah, these are the major things: objects, artifacts, image, sounds and audio, film or audio, space, place, environment, and games. So my duty is to now move on to Now recently I met a scholar in George Mason University, and she is working in. Of course she's from Kerala, but she is working there, and she comes to Kerala just to get snaps and like photographs of historical documents. And she is after getting a PhD, she is working on these areas. She says, and there are even websites run by her. She says it's a Kerala digital history. And interesting, I'll tell you one episode of what must have happened. Now imagine, she says, there is this photograph of the what we call as the waterscapes of Hill Palace. This is in central Kerala. It's a waterscape, the way that water comes out of a particular channel outside the palace, etc. Now, as you can see there, in the center there, in this area, like the center area. Now, she did a research in that, and in the sense not just in the entire area. And she put this in the website for the sake of comments and observations. And to her surprise, there were responses from throughout the world. She said maybe in a matter of 1 week, she got responses from various parts of the world on this particular thing, stating that this is one way of doing it, and this is also applicable to different civilizations and structures. That means, she says, if she had to travel throughout the world to find out equal kind or similar kind of things, it would have taken maybe 3 or 4 decades to complete the project. But here, since she could use this medium quite wisely, she got it in a matter of 3 months. And now she knows through the responses from various people, yeah, this is how you can document. This is one suggestion that she has put to us when we had a collaboration regarding a particular seminar with George Mason University. Now, similarly, there are a number of projects going on related to the digitalization or especially history part, the Kerala history or various parts, Indian history in general. Now that is happening there. This is one. Another thing that I would like to point out, that is people, especially those who teach poetry, now they know what or how to use the digital platform in a different sense. You have a poem written by the Dream, say Kim Stefan, his poem like The Dream Life of Letters, and it's an avant-garde kind of a poem, and you have this like the exercise, what we call as the animated letters and the kinetic layout. Now if you just click the YouTube there, you can see that how this is happening. Well, I can surely send you the link for those who are interested. You can find it out by yourself what happens if you follow that. It's a different way of interpreting a poem. Like we can call it as a visual poem or in the digital form. And another, there is a book which I would like to refer to, that is called The End of Books. Say it is there, the New York Times Book Review, published in 1992. So they say that we have to be free from the tyranny of line. That means we need to escape from the linear narrative of the printed novel. So they have started coming up with what we call as a different literary experience by bringing in with a new form of a novel, and something it is given there, 24 hours with someone you know. This is one visual novel that you can understand or read in a different way. And as we all know, we have the famous Rene Descartes like the expression cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Now in hypertext, if you follow a fiction like that, you can see that in hypertext the message is I link, therefore I am. Not I think, but I link, therefore I am. So if you go to the given website there, CyberArt Web, you'll get lots of ideas related to the hypertexting of novels. So when you look into the methodology part, let me now move on to the last part of the lecture there. When you look into the methodology of reading from different perspective in DH or digital humanities, you can see that, say for example, a person like Franco Moretti, now he says we must stop reading books. That's what he says. Because now the strategy of reading should be completely altered. Gone are those days we spend time by reading a book in the usual sense, but we need to identify what we call as hidden aspects of a novel by transforming them into networks or nodes, NODES, nodes. Now that is one way of reading a novel. So this is how you can escape from the usual way of understanding literature. And he has even proposed how to read Hamlet, for example. Look at that. So this is one way of looking at Hamlet, being what we call as a literary notes, and you can click on that to find out what happens to each character at what stage and how they are connected. So instead of reading from the first to the last, if you see this as one particular text, if you see this as a text, you can click on that and see how they are interrelated or correlated. This is one way of following that.
Capital city Dhaka, currency Taka.
Then, sorry, somebody has. Then comes another person called Stephen Ramsey. I'm sure those who are not interested in mathematics might object to use of that algorithmic kind of expression there or the formula there. Now this is one way of textual analysis, says Stephen Ramsey. This is taken from the digitalhumanities.org companion. Now it's a famous journal. I'll come to that soon. So this is one way of generating what we call as evidence to find out how to find what we call as the possibilities of interpreting text, which is again a mathematical kind of an endeavor or a nature of finding out different facts in a different method. Then we have another possibility of, there are people who say that it's also a social undertaking. So say this is one way of looking at the possibility of digital humanities like that. Then we have another person, for example, why we study literature in the present situation. For example, Jonathan Culler, he asks a series of questions. Will criticism continue to be primarily interpretive? Are there new models of interpretation? Now, this is asked in the Central PMLA, for example, where he says literary criticism for the 21st century. Now, these questions are asked by a person none other than Jonathan Culler on electronic-based culture as far as reading of text is concerned. So there are people, especially critics of the late 20th century, who are now trying to adjust themselves with the new demands of DH. Then Stanley Fish, we all know, for example, the famous essays that are, say, for example, text in this class, for example, he has also, like, in a say, for example, in the 2012 MLA conference, he has said that is the digital humanities is the name of the new dispensations, and his prophets that we have put faith in it, we shall be saved, etc. So there are people who are also upset with this kind of a change, or definite change in the approach towards DH, or what we call the study of humanities. So these are happening. And last but not the least, I need to refer to Alan Liu. Now, this person has also contributed a lot, because he says, where is cultural criticism in DH? So he says digital humanities have been oblivious to cultural criticism, and lack of cultural criticism blocks the digital humanities, and digital humanities can transcend their servant role. That is what he says, servant role in dealing with text or understanding of a text, etc. And finally, as a sum up, I can say that you have to identify this process that is going on regarding the accommodating two different cultures as far as study of text is concerned. Now, I think it's almost time, so I needn't take more related to that. Now, I certainly request you to go to this particular website, which is very active since 2007, related to digital humanities. It's a beautiful resource as far as people who are interested in that. It's a journal there, and you need to read this to get into the details of. And for those English teachers, in 2020, we have a book called the Routledge Handbook of English Language and Digital Humanities. It is also available, and if it is possible, and there are more than 600 pages of material on how to use digital humanities in relation with the study of English language. So that is also an important aspect which we need to ponder on in the days to come. So these are the other resources which I need to tell. And now, last, I should say, we can say, like, this is generation Z that we are dealing with. So those who are born in the mid 1990s or late maybe 2000, etc. And when we look at our students, we should see that they are digital natives. The world they live in has never felt safe. They are accepting, they are health conscious, they value their privacy, and we all know that well. They are entrepreneurial and worried about their future prospects. And finally, they are changing the distinction between what we call as the childhood and adulthood. So they don't see us even as grown-up people sometimes. So they have totally they transform the concept of the adulthood and childhood levels of say the redefined biology as such. So these are the things I would like to share for you. There are many more, but I have compressed, I should say, fast all these things together in an hour or so. So if I've been slightly fast, sorry for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this insightful session on conceptualizing digital humanities and oxymoronic dilemma. Now we have the question answer session. I would like to request to the participants to please post your questions to the resource person in the chat box. I'll just see if we have some questions or not. Okay, so we have one question from Dr. Payal Datta Chaudhary, ma'am. She's asking what kinds of projects are possible under DH or digital humanities, and how can digital humanities enhance the learning experiences of students?
Now, I think that question was put by Dr. Kanshyam, if I'm right.
Okay, Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
No issue.
No problem.
Yes,
No problem.
yes.
Now, there are only projects, I should say. As I have told you, I have made only broad hints about possible projects. If you are interested, there are even sites suggesting DH projects in various Western universities, where in which they ask. But of course, they are looking for collaborations also along with, and they even send students to other nations to find out what is happening here as far as the archiving of various like artifacts, say oral histories, etc. Say the only thing is we need to first of all get into an idea about the methodology of research as far as DH is concerned. First thing that we have to do is we have to get accustomed with the procedure of research, which is different from what we call as the way in which we generally do research in social sciences or humanities as such. Because the core area at the analytical level, we need to bring in computation. We need to bring in the use of computers. So we have to identify what our objective is and what kind of software that we are going to do to get a possible result at the end. So the research design will tell us whether a feasibility is there for the given project or not. So the intervention comes at the middle. So we need to learn at one level the problem that we are trying to address, the research question, and then the kind of software that we are using, or the kind of method that we are employing to analyze, the tool that we use, and finally what can be a possible kind of, based on our hypothesis, what can be the possible end to the given research. So that has to be designed first. So in project, I should say, anything that generates, say for example, generates some valid document related to local history, related to local literature, how history has say helped us in re-narrating the what we call as literature as such, from the perspective of ancient manuscript, and how far do we actually use those technology to read the manuscript as such. Now there are so many, I should say, implications related to the central part, as I said, the analytical part. If that is done with foolproof kind of assurance, then the result is assured at the end, means you will get the expected result. Otherwise we will end up in trouble. So we can do a lot of projects related to generally literary history, related to local history, etc. Say as such, I'm only suggesting. And then because our sense of history is rather, it is quite disappointing. But if you can do that, that will be a great asset to the department, because you start archiving, you are generating a big database for the generations to come. So that is what I would suggest. I'm not in a position now to tell you what exact one or two, etc. What I have referred to in PhD, the kind of research that a student has done in Kannur University, because she did that in the cyberspace as far as the Malabar culture is concerned. How far is Malabar culture represented in the cyberspace, and how far reflects a reality as such? Now that has been done, and almost a similar idea can be used in your domain and your space to find out what can be done there. What native knowledge has, how far the native knowledge has been brought into the purview of see, we can call it as imagined communities. Now I'm not going to the theoretical part of it, but we can understand that. Then next question
Okay.
you can ask.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that answer. We have got the next question. This question is how to sustain digital humanities to enhance teaching and learning. How to sustain digital humanities to enhance teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning. Well, it's a pedagogical practice. Now, DH can play a role unless and otherwise the topic warrants so. Otherwise, there is no need to bring in DH into that. But if it is there, if you can integrate technology within the purview of humanities that you are dealing with, fine. In that case, you can make use of this particular aspect, and then if it furthers, if it broadens the level of knowledge, fine. Then you can think of what we call as accommodating or bringing in notions related to humanities in the classroom sessions. But of course, as I have told you, if you look into the parameters which I have listed, like images, maps, etc., all those videos and all that, if you can correlate that, and if you I am reminded of the initiative done by, for example, the university. For example, last time we heard about music in Jane Austen, so for example. Now that is actually going back to the days where which the notes that are archived have been actually like brought back to life. This is one way of doing it, like, so there are possibilities.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Okay, so we will take up the next question. This question is from Dr. Rakhi Makhija. She asks, can we use digital humanities? Sorry, can digital humanities be used to conserve regional history, and in what way?
Yeah. Now, DH, of course, yes, ma'am, it is there. Regional. Now, the sense of history is always questionable because we don't know. Because generally, history supports only the winner there. So those who could establish their own kingdom, their own kind of a rule regime, now, they are generally taken as they write official history, and actually the others are wiped out. But if you can read hints of those who are wiped out, those who are through maybe archaeological kind of research and other things, it can be insightful, because history is not always for the people who have won like wars and other things. There are other possibilities, and alternative possibilities are there if you look seriously into that. In regional areas, it can be more, unless and otherwise, if they are not destroyed. If they are destroyed, well, we can't help it. But one can do a lot of work related to regional histories.
Okay, so can I take the privilege of asking the last question?
Yeah, of course. You are asking the question.
Yes, I am
Yeah,
asking.
thank you. Yeah.
Actually, well, I'm not very adept at digital humanities, but from your talk, what I have understood is that it certainly helps in the entire process of research work, right, for scholars and all. So when a scholar is doing a kind of research on, suppose, history, arts, and art, architecture and stuff like that. So do you really think, of course, it has eased the process of research in that way. Of course, everything is handy in internet and whatever websites you're talking about, and the tools and all, everything. But sir, do you actually think that, for example, when if it had not been there, we would have traveled, and certainly we would have gone to those places and studied those art and architecture and everything, right? So in that case, don't you think that it has also, I mean, along with easing the entire process of research, it has also kind of debased the entire process, or kind of, because when we travel or when we kind of explore, we are exploring our own selves as well, right? So when we are going and studying a piece of architecture or an art or whatever in its context or setting, so we all are not only studying that art, but we all are studying the context and the setting as well, right? And we all are exploring ourselves too. So in that way, don't you think that it has kind of debased, or if it has kind of debased the entire process, what is the midway? So that is my question. It's entirely on perception.
Yeah, it can happen. The one thing which I liked about DH is that it actually saves a lot of time. For example, somebody searches. I'll put a hyphen in research. So you can actually save a lot of time, because if someone does it well, now that is his or her perception of the given thing, and of course that has been documented. And if you want to do further kind of search or research on that, there should be valid clues which you believe are not undertaken by the earlier researcher. So that way, say it is not going to debase anything. I think it is actually you are actually adding to what is already being done. It is more of a contributory kind of a thing, and because you are bringing in different perspectives which are generally missing in such kind of thing, because you are not an ordinary tourist, but you are a researcher who is looking for multiple perspectives. So, and that can be, I should say, it is insightful and it is contributory. So it is not a waste of time. It is not actually stating that this is the only way that you have or somebody can do it, or maybe it has been um, totally altered the perception that one, say, someone else would have done like that. It is not going to happen like that. So I think those fears are unfounded, but of course it's an open kind of a thing. It depends on who does it and what all tools that you have, and finally what all objectives that you are trying to fulfill or gain out of that.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, I really thank the resource person, Dr. T.R. Muralikrishnan, for this insightful session, and also for having the patience to answer all the questions posed by the participants, and me too. Okay, so now it is time to listen to the chairperson of today's session. It is my privilege to introduce the chairperson for the session, Dr. Nilanjana Pathak. Dr. Nilanjana Pathak is a head of the Department of English, St. Aloysius Autonomous College, Jabalpur, since 2009. She has been in the teaching profession for the last 34 years. She has published more than 20 scholarly papers in national and international journals or magazines, has co-edited 3 books and published 2 books. She has also published poems in print and electronic sources. She had received Sakshat Mitra Award in 2009 and Editor's Choice Award for Creative and Critical Writing from the Home of Letters, India in 2010. She also received the Immanuel Kant Award and Woman of the Year Award in 2017. She is actively engaged in research work and has guided 25 MPhil dissertations so far. She strongly believes in the saying that the purpose of life is a life of purpose. Now I request Dr. Nilanjana Pathak to sum up and also give her inputs on the topic, conceptualizing digital humanities and oxymoronic dilemma. Over to you, ma'am.
Greetings of this rewarding evening to Dr. Jyoti Patil, President iSPELL, Founder and General Secretary Dr. Ghanshyam, other executive committee members, the speaker for today, Dr. Muralikrishnan, the Master of Ceremony, Ms. Sompurva Basu, and of course our coordinator, Professor Degraskar, and the enlightened audience. Thank you very much, Ms. Basu, for your munificent words of introduction. I'm humbled. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizing committee for making me a part of this stellar discourse on the occasion of the 41st Sahityik Sangam of iSPELL. The academic world is currently fraught with dilemmas, dichotomies, paradigm shifts, and challenges. We urgently need to supplement our minds, maps with discussions, debates, and brainstorming sessions like the one we just had. We are certainly moving towards an era of accelerated growth in technology, digitalization, and e-learning. And therefore, it is a laudable attempt. It is very necessary now to revisit our texts, our syllabi, our points of view. And in this context, I would like to congratulate iSPELL for this virtual meeting of minds every Sunday, which has ushered in a lot of constructive rethinking on areas of mutual interest. Now, coming to today's topic, it was a technology-centered topic which had this enough sweep to bolster the interest of each one of us. It was a topic comprehensive enough to test the mettle and scholarship of the most endowed scholar, which indeed Dr. Muralikrishnan is in every way. Sir's judicious handling of a sea of ideas brought to my mind Emerson's proposition, speech is power, speech is to persuade, to convert, to compel, unquote. Sir had, as I said, a sea of ideas. He began by telling us about the oxymoron. And sir, I must confess that I was so fascinated. It was such a captivating and arresting title that you gave to your paper that I'd been waiting for this discourse for the last 1 month, ever since Dr. Ghansham had told me the title. I was most eagerly awaiting this. I was very, very fascinated by the use of the word oxymoronic for digital humanities, and that is exactly what I'm going to talk about. So sir talked about the oxymoronic ties between digital and humanization, and he talked about how we have transited to expressing ideas digitally. He talked about electronic text. He explained the etymology of humanities and how philosophers coined it. He shared with us the features of DH, told us that it's only 2.5 decades old. Digital is data-driven. History of humanities, computerized, was discussed with interesting terms. And what particularly caught my attention was ugly stepchildren of the university. And he elaborated upon how humanities gained in popularity by merging with digital tools. Then he talked about the two waves of digital humanities, provided data on trends in digital humanities and cyberspace, validating his theoretical concepts. He showed the leap that has come with the second wave. And although the talk was something scientific, the talk was interspersed with an anecdotal quality, and there were stories, and there were research findings, and there were personal incidents, which made it very interesting. And what I would say is, sir, your talk had the touch of humanities, the human touch of humanities, and the precision of digitalization. So it was indeed a brilliant talk. Then he had the cultures. He talked about cultures, how cultures are unique, and we were taken to on a great virtual tour across the world and then brought back to the Indian streets. Then he referred to the poems and books that have generated in us deep curiosity. He talked about hypertext, and wonderfully, I link, therefore I am, instead of I think, therefore I am. Strategy of reading should be altered and it should be made digital. He gave an illustration of Hamlet condensed in one slide. Lastly, where is cultural criticism in the digital humanities? Summing up, he talked about two different cultures that have to be accommodated and how we must value Generation Z and their expectations. So it was really a sea of ideas all condensed in 1 hour. Now, sir, I would like to confess on this forum that I was uninitiated in digital humanities, and I know I knew very little. I would now use the past verb, knew very little before this brilliant talk. But I'm going to keep myself limited to the term, the oxymoron that you use, digital and humanities. And if I'm allowed, I'll just sum it up in 5 minutes. What I feel, and this is not to say I completely concur with the views expressed on this virtual rostrum before me, but yet as a very traditional teacher, I have my own reservations, some of which were expressed very well by Sampurva. So that does not in any way mean that I'm challenging anything that the scholar before me has just said, but it's just my freedom to express myself. If you please permit me, Dr. Muralikrishnan. Digitalization has taken over every realm of our life, from finding directions to mailing to banking. Everything is now managed digitally. Libraries have been digitalized. We no longer have to skirt through the British fiction section to look for our Hardy or our Bronte. We just punch a code on a PC, on a nearby PC, and voila, the Jane Eyre and Far from the Madding Crowd is right on your fingertips. So digital humanities to students means looking at humanities through the digital lens. Digital methods are necessary because it has come with the recognition that the printed word is no longer the only means for knowledge acquisition and knowledge distribution. And therefore, we have concepts like digital humanities coming. But the primary concern here is that the use of DH must, in one way or the other, serve the learning objectives of our students. 2 decades from now, when some scholars in the US and the Europe worked on computers, tried to study literature through computers, there was a huge controversy. What are machines going to do? Are they going to count the angels in Milton, or measure the length of Hemingway's sentences, or decide if Thomas More has written one of Shakespeare's plays. So as I said, there was a huge controversy, but we are fortunate that we had a scholar amongst us who answered some many sizzling questions like how should digital texts be read, how media affects the disciplines, will criticism and reading habits change? All these questions have been answered. But I would again say that digital and humanities are a paradox, because for all practical purposes, the two are taken to be contradictory terms existing in two different silos. Late in the 19th century, German philosopher Wilhelm Dilthey said that the humanities are spiritual sciences. They are human sciences which exist outside of and beyond the physical sciences. In fact, as Sir himself told us, it is the humanities is from the word humanitas, which means powers belonging to human beings as such. The most important skills developed by the study of literature is that of close reading, and followed by critical thinking and creative thinking. Digital humanities is very interesting, very intriguing at present, in fact, but it could mean a great loss to creative and critical thinking. Compared to other subjects, teaching literature is believed to be most resistant to modern technology. Now, this is because literature primarily concerns itself with mental, spiritual, and emotional notions that have very little to do with the utilitarian world of science and technology. The objection often raised is that if technology is linked with dehumanization of society, then how can the same technology be used to interpret characters, human qualities in characters in literary texts? However, despite being an apologist for everything human, despite sounding a little ambivalent, in the present context, and especially after hearing our Professor Muralikrishnan, I would still root for technology. The present generation and the coming generation would hold me to stringent scrutiny for scuttling with a perfectly contemporary trend if I do not use technology even after hearing this 1 hour talk. Today's students are used to multitude of platforms for accessing information and knowledge easily. We've just heard how many platforms. Rather than passively consuming information, they create personal information networks and connect with reading and learning communities within this helps them to collaborate. Digital humanities helps them to see better, experience better, think better, and collaborate locally, nationally, globally, and therefore have better partnerships and better impacts. From etymology to bibliography, from analysis of foreign words to quick paraphrasing of cumbersome texts, technology and especially digital humanities has ushered in a great change. Entire trends have changed in the field of research, as Sompurva has already elaborated and asked in her question. Nearly all of Greek from Homer to the 6th century AD is available on computer tapes, along with applications to elucidate those texts. There are important elements of style. For example, Carlyle's penchant for using German syntax that the computer can pick up much faster than readers. And Sir talked about how texts, ancient texts, can be converted into new media and how new perceptions can be gained on century-old texts. So in this field of exploration, after hearing Sir, I would say the future is much bigger than the past. In conclusion, I would just say a few things. Humanities and digitalization coalesce. They touch each other at various points. They are not contradictory to each other. They are not exclusive and on the path of confrontation. Digitalization has been a huge enabler. Humanities continue to provide the soft touch, and computing is the hard power required to keep it moving ahead. The canons and tenets of humanities, time-tested and absolute, will only continue to guide newer forms of digitalization, thereby helping humanities and the larger cause of humanity. I congratulate our eminent speaker for his deeply deliberated, finely articulated, brilliant talk that cleared our concepts. Keeping to the time frame, he finished in 1 hour, but sir, the echoes are going to reverberate for long times. Unarguably, this cogent talk will inaugurate a revised appreciation of humanities in the matrix of digitalization. The study initiated on this digital platform is sure to lead us to a rich world of thinking, interpretation, and academic enrichment. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank our coordinator once again and the efficient master of ceremony for steering us through this program most efficiently. I thank every member of the audience for their involvement, for their patience, and for their interest. To each one of you, may this expression of gratitude be my last word. Thank you very much, and good evening to each one of you.
And I thank you, ma'am, so much for summing up the session so beautifully in a concise manner and taking up my questions. So, and answering to my questions so beautifully. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to the resource person and you as well. I've got all my possible answers. Thank you. To quote John F. Kennedy, we must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives. It is our duty to honor the resource person and the chairperson for today's brilliant sessions. I request Professor Rakesh Kumar Digraskar, sir, the coordinator of this event, to do the honors.
Our keynote speaker today, Dr. Muralikrishnan TR. Sir, as a token of gratitude, we offer you a certificate on behalf of iSPELL. So please accept it. Thank you, sir. Now, our chairperson, Dr. Nilanjana Pathak, ma'am. Ma'am, please accept the certificate as a token of gratitude.
I accept it most humbly and with a lot of gratitude in my heart. Thank you very much, iSPELL. Thank you to the president, to the coordinator, and the founder and general secretary. I'm humbled.
Now, our master of ceremonies today, Professor Sompurva Basu. Ma'am, please accept the certificate.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
Yeah, can we please go back to the chairperson certificate? Right. Next one, please. Right. So this certificate goes to Mr. Rakesh Digraskar for conducting all the events for the month of June. All the 4 events were conducted by Mr. Rakesh Digraskar, and the duty was given to him to be the coordinator for the month, and which he has taken on his bright, young, and dynamic shoulders and executed it in such a great way. So Rakesh Digraskar, this certificate goes to you, and we do hope you'll come up with many more responsibilities in the future years and days to come, so that iSPELL will not only bloom, but it will reach to the pinnacle. Thank you very much, Mr. Rakesh Digraskar.
Sure.